So they settled a lawsuit, had to pony up $4 million, but raised their hand and said, we did nothing wrong.
Right.
We're going to pay you, just get off our backs. But our interpretation is that we didn't do a damn thing wrong. So go ahead and explain their position there. Well, hello there, Lab Coats. I am Shawn Kerley with none other than Brian Stevens with the National Real Estate Post. Brian, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Doing fantastic. We're going to jump right into it and segue off of last month's. But before we do, remember, folks, if you do not get Brian's daily video little tidbit on the National Real Estate Post, go to your app store, download their mobile app, and watch his entertaining videos. A lot of the stuff we just talk about a little more in depth instead of his 5-minute video session that he shoots out on a daily. But again, go to the app store, NREP, download it. You will thank me later. So, Brian, last time we were talking about inflation. Inflation's crazy, 8.5%. What's really nuts is that over the past 12 months, we went from 1.5% to 8.5%, like that on the inflation number. What is the Fed doing? Well, now they're coming out. They just raised their rate by 0.5 point. And what that means is that for banks to borrow money, your car loans, credit cards, things of that nature, that rate just went up 0.5 point. It doesn't directly affect mortgage rates right now. It does have an effect at some point, but what they're trying to do is slow down the economy by raising how much it costs for banks and businesses to borrow, correct? What's really nuts is that I said 8.5%. We are still going to be seeing this number going up a little bit more, hopefully cresting right around September. But if we roll back, the last time we were at 8.5%, it was the year 1981. And the interest rate, the highest interest rate in 1981 was a doozy at 16.63%. Now, I hear people freaking out on sticker shock about interest rates of what they are now compared to what they were just 4 months ago, or even 2 weeks ago. But I couldn't imagine trying to tell somebody, yeah, your qualifying rate is 16.63%. So talked about a lot. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, it's a trip, but it's going to hurt the ones who can least afford it. It's always the case. Those who are on the lower socioeconomic rungs right now, who are just trying to get by, it's going to hurt them the most. The numbers are nuts. I just thought today that we're about to cross the highest plateau for national gas prices in our country. They're assuming that that's going to take place today or tomorrow, but I find it just remarkably counterintuitive that the idea to fix our economy is to essentially make it so expensive that it's prohibitive for us to buy things, to take demand down so that prices could drop back down to where we can afford them again. Doesn't seem to take into consideration the supply lines that we have and the issues that we hear about supply lines. And you see all these people flying into Los Angeles or flying into different port cities, and the thousands of these shipping tankers out there. That's just seems to me getting those things to shore might help us out a little bit more with our inflation than some of the actions of the Fed. Now, I'm going to be talking with Barry Habib later on today about this. You know that half the people at the Fed board right now have never had a job outside of the Fed? Never. I didn't even think that was possible. I thought when he said that to me, I thought it was a joke. I really did. I thought it was a joke. And then I looked it up, and then you look at the Fed board, there's only 2 people who've had a job outside of academia, and they worked as consultants for this company called McKinley. And if you look up McKinley, it's a who's who of law firms that have torpedoed industries. I'm like, well, maybe this is just kind of par for the course right now. But I think what's happening is the idea is that we have the Fed actively trying to push us into a recession. I think that's what's going on right now. And I think it's politically expedient to do these things right now. Just look at some of the talking points we've seen over the past couple of weeks. So this certainly is something that I think that they're going to try to get, tightened up before the November, midterm elections come out. That would be my guess right now. But it appears to me that it's very deliberately trying to push us into a recession.
Yeah, so the Fed meets, every 90 days, and they're expected, they raised it a half a point last week. Or week prior, they're expected to raise it again in another 90, and then possibly another half point. So, we were going from a half a point interest rate, and they're trying to raise it up to 2 points. I mean, that is still so stupid low. And how much is it really going to slow down the economy? Yeah, 1.5 points extra is large, but back in the 80s, I referenced whenever inflation was this high, and I forget the the guy's name that was in charge of the
Walker.
Yeah, I mean, he was not crazy, but people thought he was nuts because he went, well, let's go 13% on the Federal Reserve rate, and or not Federal Reserve rate, but the actual federal rate, and we're talking about 2% by the end of this year, or maybe somewhere within that realm. And but I don't know. I understand they need to make things cost a lot more to slow down business, and it's simple supply and demand. But you hit it on the head. If we can get all the crap that's sitting there waiting to get it through the systems, I would hope that would help out.
And I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it. Like I don't get it. Are they having, are there union fights? Are there contract negotiations going? I mean, I'm not. I don't get why this isn't taking place, but it's a trip to see, and I'll tell you what, it really is a question of how far or how deep does this go. But I think there's a lot of folks right now who look at this stuff more acutely than I do, that are really kind of second guessing the road that the Fed's taking. So I think what's happening when you kind of look at what their actions are. Oh, we're going to raise it by a quarter. Oh, we're going to raise it by half. Oh, now we're going to raise it by 3/4. We got to raise it again here. We're going to raise it the next time. We're going to do this. Oh, we're getting rid of our balance sheet. And whenever you hear like anyone from the Fed speak, it's always with very tempered language and tone. That just always is. And we would hang on, like the Greenspans of the world and Bernanke's, we would hang on every word that they said, because inside of those words were very nuanced what the Fed policy was going to be. And it was always kind of nuanced, and it was always kind of subtle and deliberate. But what we hear out of the Fed now, it sounds like the old, kind of Chinese fire drill type of thing, where it's just pandemonium in the house. And so that really kind of leads me to believe that the Fed's not exactly sure what they should be doing. We don't really have an idea of how well this is going to go. It's interesting. They're like, oh, no, now we think it's going to be a soft landing. Okay, so everything that you said about the house burning down over the past 3 months, and now it's going to be a soft landing. It just sounds to me like we just don't. Again, there's too many variables at play that we just don't know.
Well,
here's the thing: people will still buy houses, right?
Oh, 100%.
Still going to buy homes, provided they build them.
Yeah. One thing that it still resonates with me that you said in the past last year is that, whenever you're trying to wrap your head around the word trillion and what does that really mean? So if you Google, what is 1 million seconds in time, it's like 11 days and 34 minutes or something like that. If you Google how much time is a trillion seconds, it goes from 11 days to 36 years, 750 or 36,750 years or something like that. Something astronomical. It's like, holy hell. But then you talked about the Fed trying to sell off or run off some of his balance sheet. They have $9 trillion invested in mortgage-backed securities and treasuries and things like that. And it's amazing the amount of cash that they've invested to keep rates as low as possible. And if they start selling off, which they said they want to, run off about 35 billion a month, what does that do to our interest rates that are already up? I mean, those should start pricing up. But whenever we go back into the recession, hell, turn on the spigot again and let's start buying them.
And that's the irony in this whole thing, don't you think?
Yeah.
Is that's exactly what's going to happen. Is what they're doing is they're trying to drop their balance sheet right now to spur what appears to be a recession. So once we go back into that recession, they can start adding to their balance sheet and pulling rates back down again. It's just kind of, it feels to me like we're being tugged in opposite directions right now with our policies.
I'm going to the gym with a Big Mac in my hand.
Exactly.
All right. So you were talking about recession.
Diet pizza.
We talked about this last time a little bit. What the hell happens to housing during recessions? Well, normally we saw there's a graph that you can Google, house values during recession time. every single year or every single time that we go into a recession, housing values go up. Not at the crazy ass rate that we've been seeing the past 2 years, but they always continually go up. The only time that they ever went down was in 2008. And the reason why we went into the recession was because of the housing market. So that's why the houses went down, because so many foreclosures. We don't have that right now. So for people think that we're in a bubble, or there's going to be a bust, or oh my God, you're going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars on your investment, it's just not true. So whatever you see in the news, you kind of want to discredit that. And what normally happens again in a recession, housing values always go up and interest rates always go down in most cases. So again, whenever you start hearing people, want to sell everything, we got to sell everything and put our money in the Folgers can and bury it in the backyard. Let's just pump the brakes. Let's not go off of fear anymore. And I don't know. Hopefully, or do you have the same thought process on that? Or
well, I mean, it's the mixed messages right now, as we're looking to actively try to increase interest rates going into a recession, where historically we could go back to the 1920s and the exact opposite happens. We can't. What did we do? I've heard that we've added anywhere from 40 to 60% in additional income in U.S. dollars into the global economy. You can't increase your money supply by 60% and just assume that you're not going to do anything to dilute the value of those other dollars.
Sure.
Then I just heard as recently as today on the news that they're looking at another spending bill because there's a next wave of COVID that's coming down the pipe. It's like eventually this type of stuff has to stop.
Yeah.
Because we are going places right now, I think, with our economy that we simply haven't seen before. We don't have models that are designed right now to really kind of facilitate and tell us what's going to happen with what decisions we make right now. Like, we're doing the exact opposite, as you said, of what we would otherwise do. We're raising rates going into a recession. Well, that seems counterintuitive to me, but we'll find out. It's, honestly, it's kind of what we talked about before. It's like, hey, people will still buy houses. There still is going to be opportunity out there. I'll tell you this too. I went up to Spokane this last weekend, and listen, this is just I don't know the circumstances, but here's what I know is I know that about 500 phone calls went out to real estate agents for an opportunity. These are 500 locally sourced calls. These aren't 500 dialers, scam likely. These are from cell phones to local people, local numbers. And I think of those, there was something like 36 phone calls got picked up.
But it's the weekend, Brian. Come on, we don't work on the weekend.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't the weekend. It wasn't the weekend. It was last week. It's just, I think when we want to talk about things that we can do in real estate from like my perspective and your perspective, I think like those are the things that we need to be addressing a little bit more, is like picking those phones up. Did you see what Zillow just came out with their new form of their new flex program?
I have not, no.
Okay, so just real quickly, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this one, but they essentially have lost 73% of their income from last year because it was all tied up with their properties. Okay, yeah, and bravo.
Yes. Keep on losing money.
But, so they're like sitting at like 26, 27% of what their revenues were the following year, this last year. So their projected income is dropping by, 75 cents on the dollar. And what they're doing is they're going into 2 markets right now, and they're trying to extend their flex program, where they're telling real estate agents, hey, listen, the only thing we're making money on right now is with our premier agent, and we're trying to do away with it. We don't even want to do this anymore. We want to get rid of it. And we want to give good agents. This is a great, I'll send you the pictures. We want to work with great agents. What does great agents entail? Picking up your phone. I swear to God, it's the greatest thing. And the second one, it says, turning those into in-person meetings with your clients, finding a way to a successful conclusion of the transaction. And point number 4 is reviews on you should be written that are positive. I'm like, all right, so let me get this straight. Pick up the phone, meet with a client, close the deal, and put a smile on their face.
Yes.
These are the things that I think we need to be working on. Because the fact that they said it means they don't think people are doing it.
Yeah. There has to be some fire with all that smoke for sure.
Exactly.
Well, let's keep on going with the doom and gloom a little bit. So for the folks that would say, I'm going to wait until the housing crash comes and I can pick up a house for a lot cheaper. I'm going to wait for the recession where interest rates are a lot cheaper for my affordability aspects. So I'm just going to go rent. You had a show to where you show that you broke down some of the cities, which were just stupid crazy, but also
Nuts.
helped the national average on rent go up a whopping 22%. That is just nuts to me. So if somebody's going to wait, okay, the house is going to be worth more tomorrow than it is today. Yeah, they might get a little bit better of an interest rate later on down the road, but I'm going to go rent, but now I'm going to be paying 22% more than what I was last year. I just, what do people just, the landlords just have everybody over the coals and say, hey, there's so many people that want to rent. This is what you have to pay me.
I don't know if it's so many people who want to rent. I think it's so many people who can't afford to buy. I
Yeah.
think that's what it is more than anything. And it's these new these homes that they're building, the new home rentals, where they're literally building new homes as if they would for your primary residence, single family primary residence.
Mhm.
And they're building right now for as income producing properties because there's just more money on the table for those. And yeah, some of the rents that we were looking at were shocking. Up over there was a number of cities that were up over 50% this time last year.
Yeah.
And they weren't the New Yorks and San Franciscos of the world. I mean, I think one was like Amarillo or Albuquerque, you know,
Yeah,
it's
you
just
even,
a lot of the smaller cities are seeing massive, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50% increases in their rents. You know, and the other thing is if you're holding off to buy a house because you think property values are going to come down, you might be right. But the reason property values will come down is probably because of a higher rate environment. So any gains that you may perceive that you're making by buying a house that could possibly go down in value is going to be offset by the higher payment based on the higher interest rate that you're getting. So it's not any worse, but what I'm saying is that no matter what our market is doing right now, it's going to be calibrated and probably tempered by a mixture of rates fluctuating up and down, along with property values and determining on how much they're escalating or not escalating. So buying a house today, and you know, here's the thing. When we're starting to look at all the potential inventory that could come on the market, we've talked about the boomers, the fact that they're now getting to that age. Again, I love my mom as much as the next person, but you have the second largest population density our country has ever known. And they're all getting to well beyond retirement years, more kind of in the convalescing type of years. Again, love my mom as much as anybody else. But think about this. So if everybody is concerned about inflation right now, what is one of the greatest tools that we have to fight against inflation? It's what everybody just did. They all did their rate and term refinances. They got that interest rate at 2.5%. That's sort of 2.75% or 3%. That's now fixed for the next 29 and a half years of that loan. And even if somebody finds themselves cash strapped a little bit more today, I think they're going to be more inclined to try to make it work with that lower payment, because that payment's not going to change. If we're watching rents right now, we know for certain that rents are going to be going up and pretty significantly. So the potential for a little bounce with inventory that I was kind of perceiving we would get in the coming months, I think that we're going to see a little bit less on that, because I think people are just going to be more inclined to ride this thing out and see what happens 12 to 24 months down the road.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people that, you know, with boots on the ground, whenever they're talking to clients about listing their house, like, man, my rate is just so good. And it's just that sticker shock of, I got a 2.75. Why do I want to take a 5.5 or
Right.
whatever it may be with that, with their specific scenario? It's just a hard, and it's a lot, it's more money whenever the rate's 3 points higher or 2.5 points higher, but it's also a behavioral thing to where it just doesn't sound sexy. 2 point whatever sounds super sexy, and I don't want to give that up. So that's a hard one to overcome. But there was one point that I want to hit that you talked about. So you're saying that we have an issue with builders. Housing's just taking too damn long to build because of supply chain issues, things of that nature. Costs are going up. But whenever you look at it, the builders are building blocks of houses for investors to purchase so they can rent it out, instead of blocks of houses for your 2-1s, having folks come in and buy it to live in it, to own it. So what do you have any stats or any numbers on that? Or is this just something that you read and saw?
A little bit of both, but it's a very reasonable evolution for housing in this country right now. People simply can't afford to buy a house. I was just looking at a new program that we have here in the state of California, and what we have is we're making a 10% down available to somebody who wants to buy a house. So we started looking at the median income versus the median sales price. The median income with a couple who are both working, is about $80,000 a year. $80,000 a year. The median sales price for a house in California is $760,000.
Sounds doable.
Not on their best day could they afford to buy that house. And this is happening all over the country right now. And this is really turning into something of an epidemic. What makes it actually more interesting is the state of California said, well, you can only have 80% of the median income for the area in order to qualify for the average house. And I'm like, oh, so what? They're going to qualify for $40,000? You're giving them 10% down? This is bordering on, as we talked about, an epidemic of catastrophic proportions that needs big ideas to come in here and fix it. Like I said, I think the whole idea of the Army Corps of Engineers calling the United States housing market a national crisis and funding the Army Corps engineer to go build a whole bunch of small, smart, cheap houses. But when we start thinking about the evolution of properties, there isn't a huge incentive for new home builders to go build an entry-level house, that 1,800, 1,900 square foot 3-2, when they can build a 3,500 square foot house that's got 6 bathrooms and 5 bedrooms. So there's more profit margin in building that house, but there's no opportunity for first-time home buyers there. So what would the next evolution be where they're going to be able to keep as much money as humanly possible? Well, let's just build them and make them look like new homes, but let's realize all these rent increases that we're seeing across the country right now, which basically looks like it's going to go unchecked for the foreseeable future. And even if they held on to these things for 4 or 5 years, gained a little bit more market appreciation in the value of the houses, and then sold the whole thing off, they'd make out like bandits. And I think you're going to see a lot more new home builders engaging in this type of behavior, because it's simply the only way to pencil building a 3,400 square foot house and getting somebody in there right now.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but I do love your idea of the Army Corps of Engineers, because I mean, if somebody can get something done efficiently, I think those guys and girls can handle that.
Oh my God, they can put a bridge over anything.
So you talked about one tech company. Let's switch over to another, Redfin. So they settled a lawsuit, had to pony up $4 million, but raised their hand and said, we did nothing wrong.
Right.
We're going to pay you, just get off our backs. But our interpretation is that we didn't do a damn thing wrong. So go ahead and explain their position there.
All right. Well, first of all, they're lying to us. But I'll tell you, okay, so what they do is they basically charge 1.5 points and they rebate 1 point back to you. So your commission's going to be extremely low. That's the idea. And by the way, you get what you pay for.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay. So what happened is they said, well, in certain markets where the price point gets too low, there's just not enough money on the table for us to make money. So in some of the more depressed markets where maybe it's $90,000 for a house, they don't offer those houses for sale because the $900 that they're going to clear isn't enough money. Well, that has an unintended consequence now, doesn't it? Because oftentimes the poorest neighborhoods are going to be neighborhoods of color, and it's going to be viewed inherently as being discriminatory in nature, because you're not servicing communities that would otherwise need to have that type of service to help elevate everybody there. So it's essentially redlining. So Redfin got accused of redlining, and they factually kind of did it. We were looking through at some of the cities that they were doing this in. Here's the part where they're lying to me. So when we were looking at this, they were saying, and I say this in tongue in cheek, but they were saying, okay, in a little town called Issaquah, where it's $450,000 for your average house, that's too cheap. So we will list a house in Redmond, Washington, which is going to be $520,000, but we're not going to list in Issaquah, which is $400,000. The numbers were so much higher than what our national averages were, and they were saying that wasn't enough money for them. So when they're saying, well, when prices are too low, we can't make money. And I'm saying this is significantly more expensive than the average house across the country. So there's a lot of that kind of going on there. But now think about this. If we agree with Redfin that they simply can't afford to turn a profit on some entry-level homes in some of our harder hit areas around the country, that means in order to be compliant and not have a discriminatory business model, all they would need to do is charge twice as much money. They charge twice as much money. They can now service underserved communities. And all they're going to do is just, make more off the backs of people who can ill afford it.
I think you're being a little facetious there.
Little damned if you do, damned if you don't, right?
Yeah.
It kind of is, because it technically is discriminatory nature with what they're doing. If they're not going into communities and servicing communities of color because they can't turn a profit there, that is right there, RESPA, right down the line,
Yeah.
fair housing violation type of stuff. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah.
But the way to fix it would be like, we don't want those type of corrections in our lives now, do we? So why would we impose them on other people? But that would fix it. So what they're going to do is they're taking away their minimum. They say they're going to start servicing more communities right now. And they've got a number of different outreach programs that they've done, but their hand was caught just smack dab in the middle of the cookie jar on this one. There's no two ways about it.
Let's go back to the builder issue. Cheryl Hansen brings up a good point. In California, you still have issues of all the fees required in permitting, et cetera, before you even nail your first board. 100% correct. That is largely responsible for the high cost that we have here in California versus other states. What can we do about that? And it's in every damn state. I know it's here in the middle of the United States, in little old St. Louis, Missouri. We have the same issue that every single little department has some sort of cash grab for a builder just to put a damn foundation, or you put up a couple walls and a roof. So I understand what you're saying. What's one way of getting around that?
No, there is only one way to get around it. Change who you vote for. California, listen, I'm not here to talk politics with anybody, but California has effectively been a one-party state for 75 years. If we don't like our high cost of living out here, our high taxes, our high regulation, which is higher than anywhere in the country, go find somebody who's going to lower our taxes and maybe manage our money a little bit more responsibly. I think that's a huge part of it. But yeah, when you start looking at the cost of your framing wood, like your poplar woods, and bringing this in, most of it comes from Canada. There's a surplus on that. We never actually even really got over the 2008 and 9 and 10 housing recession that we had. A lot of our quality, like house framers and tin knockers, frankly, left the market for different industries because nobody was building houses back then. Then, of course, you add COVID on top of that a decade later. So we have a very, very high cost of skilled labor and limited amounts of skilled labor, higher costs for sheetrock and framing wood and everything else that we need. And then you come to states like California that are the highest tax states in the country, the least business-friendly states in the country, and who've got permits for absolutely everything under the sun. It does make it very prohibitive.
Yeah, no, and it gets a little frustrating because I do know builders and even contractors where it's the age old, or what everybody's saying, they can't just find good help, and they're looking everywhere. But you're 100% right. If I'm in that industry and I'm swinging a hammer for a living and there's no work for me, I'm going to go find something else to do to make ends meet, provide for my family, and then I kind of like working on the inside when it's not 30 degrees outside. This is nice. Why would I go back to it? But if the people that went back to it, they could command a salary, or they're just wages through the roof. And we saw that in the mortgage industry just 2 years ago. Whenever we had so much business we didn't know what to do with, we didn't have the infrastructure, so we were hiring folks at a rapid pace at stupid high volumes, or as far as salaries and bonus structures and things like that. But now you're seeing what a lot of mortgage companies are doing with, down 30 to 50%, depending on who you're working for. But Cheryl, great point. There's no 100% easy, just do this answer on that. But I guess the first thing would be is who passes your laws, and you have a conversation with them.
I think right now with the market that we're in, it's just time to pop some corn and watch the movie. Just watch whatever unfolds. Whatever's going to happen, it's going to be okay. As long as we still get to eat inside, we're okay.
It'll be interesting because everybody goes, no matter who's in office, what party, whatever, especially when it comes up close to election time, the other people are really, really bad. I kiss puppies, or I kiss babies, and I pet puppies, and everything I do is perfect. But when people are not feeling the perfect message that is being brought to them, like, how do they react? So it'll be interesting for sure.
Oh, it will. Like I said, that's coming.
Well, my friend, we are out of time. Thank you again, and thanks for the folks. Cheryl, thank you for your comment, your question. We do appreciate that, and we'll see you in June. So we'll be reporting on anything else that changed. And again, if you don't have Brian's app with National Real Estate Post, type in NREP in your app store or wherever the hell you get your apps from, download it, and enjoy that beautiful face every day.
Aw. All right, man. You have a good day, and I'll talk with you soon.
So see you, buddy. Bye-bye.
Later, bud.